This one's probably gonna be a little rough. Been a lot of discourse about this film over the last week or so that it's been out, and I think for anybody who's been paying any attention to the internet, you'll know which one I'm talking about. So, before we get into it, make sure you settle in, grab you a drink, let's do it. Cheers.
We are the DFPN. Always question the answers.
So, The Woman in the Yard is 2025 horror film released by Blumhouse. Came out last week, March 28th. Directed by, I'm going to butcher some of these names, but it's directed by John Colette Serra. Written by Sam Stefanik. And stars Danielle Deadweiler, Akwai Akpakwasili, and Peyton Jackson. And man, has it caused a bit of a ruckus, online especially. And I think for good reason, but I think a lot of that frustration is being aimed in the wrong direction. I think the director, I think Blumhouse, Jason Blum specifically, are catching a lot of crap for something that really the MPAA should have caught, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. But just to break it down, The Woman in the Yard is essentially about a widowed mother who is dealing with her grief the only way she knows how, spending a lot of time in bed, watching videos of her and her husband. But she has two children, Tay, who is a teenage boy, along with Annie, who is their young daughter, which these kid actors are outstanding. Annie doesn't have a whole lot to do in this movie. She's very much, I don't want to call her a prop because that does a disservice to the young actress who portrays her and does an outstanding job of it, Estella Kahia. But she doesn't play as important a role in the film as Taylor Tay. They call him in the movie, played by Peyton Jackson, who really stands out as the. I kind of want to point him out as the antagonist to Danielle Deadweiler's Ramona, who's the mother in this film, and does an outstanding job doing it. I've seen a few folks talk about the fact that they get tired of the angsty teenage rebellious kids standing up to their mom. I think Peyton does a very, very good job with Taylor, and thanks to the direction, I think. Of being realistically frustrated by his mom's inactivity and her not necessarily unwillingness to get up and move, because she does, but she is definitely letting what we initially think is just her grief really hold her down and keep her from taking care of very basic things, right? In the opening moments of the film, we see that he is feeding the chickens, he's collecting the eggs, he's cooking the breakfast, he's feeding the dog, to include feeding the dog scraps out of the fridge because they're out of dog food, because Ramona hasn't gone to pick any up, and taking care of his sister, even though, if there's one slip up, if Annie gets hurt somehow, Ramona automatically snaps on Taylor, letting him know that he needs to do a better job of paying attention to her and what she's doing. Overall, the family dynamic in this film, I thought was very, very well done. I thought it was relatable. I thought it was realistic. It was a stellar portrayal by these folks. I will say that Russell Hornsby, who plays David, the deceased father and husband in the film, while he doesn't have a huge role in the film itself, his character plays a massive role in the story that they're telling. But Russell Hornsby himself is only in a couple scenes. He does a very good job of playing that low key, wants to keep the family together, wants to do what he can to make sure everybody's happy and everybody's taken care of, but also isn't going to bow down to unrealistic expectations, right? And I thought that was handled very, very well. Now, again, I'm going to butcher this name and I apologize, but Ukwai Akpakwasili, who plays, she's listed in credits as woman, but she is the woman in the yard, is very creepy in this film. She handles the role very, very well. She is an imposing physical presence compared to the other characters, other actors on screen. And the director does this amazing thing where for the first 3/4 of this film, the woman is literally just in the yard. She doesn't show a physical presence in the house until quite later in the film. But they use a lot of shadow work, similar to Nosferatu, if you've seen that. The shadow is the evil here. It is the triggering device. It is the mechanism by which, the woman in the yard enacts some of her plans. And some of the shots are very, very cool. A shadow reaching out and going up the side of a wall, and you see a finger flick, and then the wind chimes suddenly jingle, startling the character out of, what they were focused on. Very, very well handled. Overall, and before I get into some of the spoiler stuff toward the end of the film, where I'll probably spend the vast majority of the time talking, because that's been where the bulk of the discourse has been. I think this was a good film. I would rate it probably 3.5 out of 5. I haven't gotten around to writing my Letterboxd review, but that will be coming soon. That being said, I think had the ending been handled differently, or the MPAA rated this appropriately, I think this would have been a 4-star film. It is very, very good. It is emotionally draining. It brought tears to my eyes near the end of the film. As someone who's dealt with depression and we'll say dark ideations, I thought it portrayed them very, very relatably. I'm not going to say realistically because there's a friggin' ghost woman in the front yard, but it hit me in a way that not many films that deal with this subject matter do, and I think it's because of the choice that I think it's because of the direction that they decided to go with the end of it. So yeah, 3.5-star film for me out of 5. The cast is outstanding. The shots are gorgeous. I thought the setting was perfect. The relationship between the family is outstanding. Some of the twists and turns that the story takes, while not necessarily shocking or surprising, are appropriate for the story that's being told. So while I wasn't left with my jaw dropped for any amount of time, I appreciated the way the story went, so I will give it a lot of credit there. Now, for anybody who hasn't seen this film yet, hasn't seen any of the discourse about it, and doesn't want any spoilers, I'm going to make one last statement, and then I need you to click off, go see the movie, and then come back and finish this video later. But all I will say before we get on with the spoilers is that because of the way this film handles a very important story point that goes through the entire film, but really the conclusion, this should have been an R-rated movie, not PG-13. I think I'm a big proponent of freedom of speech. I believe that artists should be able to present whatever they feel is important, and in whatever form they deem appropriate for it. I think it is, governing bodies and rating bodies like the MPAA who have the onus of making sure that it is rated appropriately for the audience that sees it. So I will say that if you are a fan of bleaker films, darker subject matter, this is one that I would definitely recommend checking out. If you have a history of depression or anxiety, I think you will relate to this film in a way that you might not others. Um, I will say that if you are easily affected negatively by films that take a dark approach to this, this might not be the film for you. And I say that as a fan, right? I'm no scholar, I'm no critic, I've never taken classes in film critique. I've got a bachelor's in English with a focus on creative writing, right? So I'm not approaching this from any kind of scholarly standpoint. Just as a fan and as someone who's dealt with some of these problems before, I could see this film being problematic for some people. Now, that being said, this is final warning. We're going to get into spoiler territory because I'm about to get into the end of this film. So this is your last chance. I'll count to 5, and if you're still around, then we'll keep chatting. But cheers to Val Kilmer. Rest in peace. We lost him this week. All right. So if you're still around, I'm going to assume you've either already seen the film or you aren't big on the spoiler discourse that goes out online, or you're just really interested to hear what I, strangely enough, have to say about this film. So the ending of this movie tore me apart up to a certain point. Almost had me in tears. Up to the point where... All right, so there's a scene in the attic. The mom has told her kids to go to the neighbor's house. She has sent them away. She is sitting in a chair in the attic, and the woman in black is helping her take this rifle and take her own life. And the shot lingers for a long time on a mirror image of the main character Ramona and the after the woman in black has merged with her, and you don't see her pull the trigger, but it is very, very obvious that she is going to, right? And then there's some twists and turns, and then the very last shot of the movie confirms that fact. We also very clearly during a flashback sequence, right before she opens up to her son about what really happened, we find out that the woman in black, even though you'll hear a lot of people talking about the woman in the yard being an analog for grief, right? I've heard a lot of people say, this movie is just another trope of grief, the grief as monster, right? Or monster as grief. That is not the story that this is telling. Grief plays a part, but through the flashback scene where you find out what happened the night that her husband dies, you find out that this woman in the yard is depression. And she has been around for far longer than we see of Ramona in the movie. And I would imagine it would be the bulk of her adult life and possibly into her childhood. We don't get to see that far back, which I'm kind of thankful of. I think that would have taken the film in a direction that none of us would have enjoyed. I think it would have been too dark at that point. But the bottom line is that this movie is very much about letting depression convince you that certain actions are appropriate for the well-being of those around you, right? And I can't, from a personal standpoint, I do not agree with that stance. I think the way they did it was beautiful. I think the pictures, the scene where the woman in the yard takes the lighter and illuminates the photos of her children, and it shows them grown up and happy, right? I don't believe that we're meant to accept that as how the kids will end up. I think we are meant to see that depression is able to skew our optimism or pessimism, as it were, to make us believe that that is the outcome that would happen were we to remove ourselves from the picture, right? I think it goes deeper than the surface level Oh, they're just saying that, as long as she kills herself, the kids will be fine. I don't think that's the point. And I could be wrong. The director could come out and say that, no, that's exactly what it was. She was depressed. She was dysfunctional. She wasn't able to take care of the kids. So, yes, the kids absolutely would have been more successful without their mother around. I disagree with that, and I disagree with that vehemently. I think any kid put in a situation where either parent is removed is in for a harder road. It doesn't mean that they won't be successful and they won't be happy later on down the road, but there's always going to be a hole there. So that I disagree with completely. But I do think that if that is the story they were trying to tell, right, where depression is so powerful that it can drive an individual's view of reality to be skewed that much to where they actually believe that we'll call it taking the old suicide to try to bypass some of YouTube's censorship stuff would be the best outcome for everybody. Now, where I have issues with the end of this film, and where I said earlier that I believe the MPAA dropped the ball, this should not be a PG-13 movie, right? Because of the fact that surface level, this film could be seen as showing self-harm or the termination of one's life as a net benefit to those around them. I don't feel that the MPAA did their job in rating this appropriately. I think this is very much a movie that should have been rated R. I think it is a movie where adults, or at least people over the age of 17, went to go see it and then made a determination as to whether or not they wanted to take their younger children. I do not believe that this is a movie that is appropriate for kids 13, 14 years old, late middle school, early high school, the really dramatic years of their childhood, where most people are angsty and questioning who they are, and it's a highly emotional period. It's hormonal, and I mean, if anybody really looks back at the end of middle school or their freshman year and they're like, yeah, everything was great, they're either the exception to the rule, or, well, I mean, they were the exception to the rule. I think most of us, we look back on those times and we go, whew, man, am I glad that's over. Right? Man, am I glad I'm on the other side of puberty. Because it's rough, and I think everybody can admit that it's rough. Now, I think a lot of creators, reviewers, self-appointed film critics are going after Jason Blum and Colette Sarah unfairly. And I think they're doing that because they want to put the blame for this film's messaging and for access to this film on the director and on the production studio and the distributor. I think that's misaimed. I don't think that's appropriate. I think that Jason Blum and I think that Colette Sarah and Sam Stefanik have written and shot and distributed a very, very effective horror film that dives into very uncomfortable subject matter, and we're lucky to have it. And the reason I say that is because I am a firm believer in the fact that horror gives us the ability to dive into subject matter and approach them from directions that no other genre does. Period. You couldn't tell this story in a drama and have it impact the same way. You couldn't tell this story as a fantasy or a science fiction or a comedy, or it wouldn't work outside of horror. You have to be able to show depression as the monster that it truly is, and you cannot do it outside of this genre. So I'm extremely happy that they did this film, and I'm happy that Jason Blum released it and put it together and let people see it. I think it does have an important message as long as the audience is ready for it and they realize what that message is. Or maybe I'm wrong and the surface level message is what they're saying, in which case this is a shit movie. But I'm not interpreting it that way. I'm looking a little deeper at it. Now, what I will say is that, and I said this a couple minutes ago, but the MPAA really should have taken a look at this film. They exist for a reason, right? The whole idea behind the MPAA and it being stood up was to rate films appropriately for the audience that should be viewing them, and they missed the boat on this severely, I believe. Which is shocking to me, because you look at something like, what was it, 13 Reasons Why, I think was the name of the Netflix show a few years ago. There was a huge stink about that, and it touched on similar subject matter, right? I expect we'll see a lot of that from this as well. But I hope that people are able to focus their frustrations and their questions on the right people. And I don't believe that Jason Blum or Jaume Colette Serra or the cast or crew, the writer, I don't believe they're the right people to do that for. So, all right, so I'll get off of that soapbox for a minute. But overall, I enjoyed my time with this movie. I was the only person in the theater, which frankly didn't surprise me after seeing all the discourse, which may have swayed my opinion of it a little bit, because I was able to. It was a much more intimate setting, I think, than it could have been. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very well done. Is it a movie I'll see again? Probably not. I have no desire to watch this movie again at all. But that's okay. I think it did what it was meant to do, I think, when I sat down and watched it. But yeah, very, very interesting film. Very, very well done. Very, very well shot. Amazingly well acted. Special effects were solid. Not too many jump scares, but the aura around it was very creepy, very eerie, which I think is the right vibe for a story like this. I mean, you couldn't tell the story with Freddy Krueger or Art the Clown. It just wouldn't work. So yeah, overall, I give this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. Would definitely recommend that you wait until it gets on streaming, just because of the ratings issue. I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would spend the price on a movie ticket without knowing what I was going in for. So, take that with a grain of salt from a fellow movie fan, somebody who's not a critic, but do with it what you will. But yeah, that's about all I've got for The Woman in the Yard. So, if you happen to get a chance to go see it, let me know down in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Hit me up on Facebook or Blue Sky, CJ Lovelady Horror Fan on Facebook, or at CJ Loves Horror on Blue Sky. We can strike up a conversation. I always love talking to people who have different points of view than me, and this one is sure to lead to some conversations, which I'm really looking forward to. But other than that, just keep getting it on. So enjoy your day, evening, whatever time it is. Take it easy, and we'll catch you next time.